Hello followers and welcome back to my Minecraft tutorial, and this is episode 50, and in today's episode we're going to be talking about Redstone Dust. So there's not too much to talk about really in terms of Redstone Dust, but I'm gonna just quickly set the time here. It's a very important key component which we discussed in the last episode. So here it is, Redstone Dust. Everybody loves Redstone Dust, don't they? Magic wire. But how does it work, and how can we use it and its properties to make such giant redstone contraptions? And I know what you're thinking, how can I use it in my builds? So we're going to discuss that today. So just a quick recap from last episode, the differences between the building block and the energized block. The building block is just here because it has to be. I don't think there's actually... oh yeah, there is some over there. Some of the energized blocks are important, and we're going to talk about these in a minute. But first, let's get the very basic stuff about Redstone Dust out of the way. It comes from an ore that you mine underground, which we showed off in the caving episode, and you get this from it. I'm trying to get it on top. There, you get it from, you get this from it, this little powdery dust-like stuff, which is why we call it Redstone Dust. It's the transmitter of redstone power or signal, so you can put an input on the end of it, and you will get power through it. So with that out of the way, let's actually talk about the properties of Redstone Dust. So this right here is our first concept that we need to understand when talking about Redstone Dust, and that is the concept of first degree power and second degree power. And Redstone Dust is quite important when discussing this. So as you can see right here, I have a lever which is going to act as our input, a red wool block which we know as being an energized block, and then an output, in this case a redstone lamp. And this could be anything, a piston, a trapdoor, a gate, whatever it is. So if I flick this on, as you can see, the light turns on, and this is the concept of first degree power and second degree power. So this is an important concept. This block right here, the energized block, is receiving first degree power, and first degree power means that there is energy in this block and it is ready to give it out to any outputs which are on any blocks that are which can face this. So what I mean by that is right here, here, even behind it, but there is a lever there, and even right below it, which we will look at in a minute. So anything though here which receives second degree power is going to activate, but this doesn't have energy in it. So for example, if I was to do this and then that's never going to happen. That is not going to work. And even with another output on the end, it's still not going to work. So what this means is first degree power is a block which has energy in it and is ready to share to a second degree power block, which is usually an output. And that's basically the concept of first degree power and second degree power. So again, we have another setup here. We turn the lever on, this block gets energized, first degree power. This lamp then gets power from that and receives second degree power. And even right the other side of it, you get second degree power here, which goes into the Redstone Dust. So as I said earlier, even right below it, if I show you this, turn on the lever, the block here receives first degree power, and this right down here is receiving second degree power. So if you want to use this in a pressure plate setup and hide the wiring, you can do this, pretend that there's more of a floor here, and you can send a redstone signal out that way. And that is the concept of first degree power and second degree power. So always remember that when an input like a lever goes into a block, the block right here is receiving first degree power, and then any blocks coming off of it are receiving second degree power. Now one thing to consider is, even if I had a lamp here, which is, as we know, an output, and I turn this on, this is still receiving first degree power. It does not matter whether it is an output that is receiving it or just a regular block that doesn't do anything with redstone. Just wanted to make that quite clear in case anybody was wondering. Okay, so with that in mind, let's talk about the length of Redstone Dust. Redstone Dust will travel 15 blocks before running out of signal. And as you can see right here, there's the 15th block, and this is the 16th. Boom, it's dead. There's no power to that. And as I said earlier, redstone, in this, the concept of first degree power and second degree power, Redstone Dust will always power the block below it. So anything on here will receive second degree power. So all of these blocks right here are receiving first degree power. So anything underneath the redstone is receiving first degree power. And as you can see right here, I've got some demos set up showing the length of Redstone Dust will provide. One thing that you do need to note is that redstone cannot be placed underneath a block as far as this setup goes, like this. If I go like this and then try and put redstone here, that's never going to work, and you can't place it on the side of a block either. This is just a visual thing. If you put redstone right here, it just shows like this that it connects, and we'll talk about this again in a minute, where this can be a useful detection system so that you can actually troubleshoot problems within your redstone. So that, to be honest, is everything in terms of its length and where it powers. So always remember, the block right below the dust is receiving first degree power, and anything coming off of that will receive second degree power. So now let's talk about the differences between the redstone dot and the redstone line. Actually, one thing I did neglect to mention here is you can extend this beyond 15 blocks, but for that you need either a repeater or an inverted gate, and we'll look at those in a couple of episodes time when we look at the redstone repeater and the logic gates respectively. So let's now talk about the differences between the redstone dot and the redstone line. So the redstone dot is when one piece of redstone is on its own, like that, but if two are next to each other, it forms this line. And the thing to note with this is the redstone dot prior to 1.0 was actually a cross, which made a lot of sense because it can power any of the blocks around it. So any of these blocks right here are all receiving first degree power, as well as the one directly below it, as we discussed over there. And the second degree power is easy, it's just all the blocks that can touch a side of a first degree powered block. Look at that, we've got a little nice chandelier coming along right here. So that's just important to mention where that powers, because now they've changed it to a dot, it can be quite difficult to actually know where it powers. So now the redstone line, when two are together, power a little bit differently. So as normal, the blocks right below it get powered, and at either end get powered, but ones off to the side do not receive power. They do not even receive second degree power. They just get no power at all. Like here, this block's getting first degree power, so I can put lamps on here and I will get the second degree power effect there. But the reason these are not powered is because the redstone dust is not pointing into them. It's only pointing into this guy, and it is on top of these two, which is why people get confused with this dot, because it doesn't point into anything. But just try and picture this as a cross instead of a dot if you're having trouble looking at where the dot actually powers. So that's always important. This is one of the most common problems with people and redstone, is they don't know what is being powered where. So that is something to consider with these two. So I'm sure that many of you throughout various YouTube videos, if you watch Let's Players and so on, have seen this setup, where there's a bunch of pistons or lamps or whatever it is, and they whack a bunch of repeaters behind it. And the reason for doing this is to basically force power into it by giving it a direction to go in. However, as you can see right here, however, if you can get away with it, there is a little trick that you can use to save on resources, and that is to do this. It does the exact same thing. Remember what we talked about over there, that redstone dust will always power the block below it, so you can actually do this to save on resources. And as you can see, all the pistons still power, and all of the lamps are lit up here as well. So that's just a nice little trick. However, there are certain situations where this is required, and we'll probably talk about those when those situations arise. But for the most part, if you can get away with this, I would highly recommend you using it. So before crafting up a bunch of repeaters in survival, just try this, see if it gives you the right results that you're looking for. And finally, in today's episode, I want to talk about this. This is the infamous redstone squiggle, and that's what I call it anyway. And we don't want this. Most of the time we don't want it, because you can often want two redstone lines being powered side by side, but if you do not block them off properly, you can end up with the infamous squiggle. And there is a good way to prevent this from happening, and that's to simply put a block directly above this. And as you can see right here, if I keep doing it, I have cut it off, so you can keep these separate using that. And some people seem to have this obsession with repeaters, and they will try and separate them out using repeaters like this, and it's really a real big waste of resources in survival mode. It's not too bad in creative mode, but this is a good way and good practice to save on resources by blocking them off with a solid block. And a solid block is anything, basically, with a few exceptions, any of these blocks in here. If you want to physically block it off but still want the power to go like this, then you can use a transparent block. And a transparent block is glass, glowstone, stairs, half slabs, things of that nature. So as you can see here, I've actually put some glass blocks down, but the power is still travelling through. So if you want to physically block something off, but still want the redstone to go through, then you can use a transparent block. But if you want it totally blocked off, then you want to use a solid block, which is none of those things. So things like stairs, half slabs, these things here, glass, glowstone, all of those kind of things you don't want to use if you want to block something off and prevent redstone from traveling like this. So that's just about everything with the Redstone Dust. So the world download will feature everything that you've seen here today, just this particular section right here. So if you want to have a play around with this yourself, then feel free to download it. It will be available in the description for you to grab. And if you have any questions, as always, please put them in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to answer. If you've had any questions as regards the first degree or second degree power we talked about, the differences between the dust and the line, the dot and the line, and anything that we discussed over here. So before we end the episode off, let's go for a quick, very fast recap. Redstone dust is found in the ore that you mine underground. It acts as a transmitter for redstone, acts as a redstone signal transmitter. We talked about first degree power and second degree power, and how if you have an input, then a block right here, this is receiving first degree power, and the block next to it is receiving second degree power. We talked about how that it can go through to the other side, above it, or even below it. We spoke about the fact that redstone dust can travel 15 blocks, and that it powers the block right below it. We talked about the differences between the dot and the line, and we talked over the concept that if you want something to be powered, then you want the redstone dust to be pointing into that block. And we showed off a little trick here to save on resources if you can get away with it, using the trick that redstone dust powers the block below it. And we talked about the infamous redstone squiggle and how to prevent it or how not to prevent it. So that's just about everything. I hope that you found today's episode useful, and I hope to see you in the next episode when we're going to be talking about the redstone torch and the block of redstone. So until then guys, see you later and have a good day.